This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up we've got the very latest on stories developing around the world. First up, the headlines.
No country, no community and no individual is safe until we are all safe.
The World Health Organization warns the risk related to the COVID variant Omicron is very high, a day after it classified it as a variant of concern. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says the country will bar all foreign arrivals because of the new variant from tomorrow.
We are deeply disappointed by the decision of several countries to prohibit travel from a number of Southern African countries, including our own, following the identification of the Omicron.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa slams Western countries for imposing travel bans over the new COVID variant. He says it's a clear violation of commitments promised at the G20 in Rome last month. Britain calls an emergency G7 meeting to discuss the COVID crisis after several European countries announced cases of the new Omicron variant. India's parliament passes a crucial bill to repeal controversial farm laws amid protests by the opposition. Iran's top nuclear negotiator says the focus at Vienna talks will be on reaching an agreement with Western nations to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal, even as Tehran's top priority remains the removal of economic sanctions. An emergency G7 meeting on the Omicron COVID-19 variant is due to start shortly. The meeting was called by the UK. Omicron's been officially labelled as a variant of concern by the World Health Organization. It has multiple mutations which may make it more contagious, and it might be more resistant to available vaccines. Scientists are scrambling to establish whether and to what extent that's the case. The international response has been swift. Much of Europe was already reporting record COVID cases before the discovery of the new variant. Omicron has now been detected in several EU countries.
We take this Omicron variant very serious, and we know that we are now in a race against time. Why that? Because we know not all about this variant, but it is a variant of concern. And the scientists and manufacturers need 2 to 3 weeks to have a full picture about the quality of the mutations of this Omicron variant.
The Netherlands has detected 13 cases of the Omicron variant among 61 people who tested positive for COVID after arriving on the last 2 flights from South Africa. The country has tightened its COVID restrictions, with a shutdown order post 5 p.m. local time. In France, the health minister has confirmed 8 possible cases of the Omicron variant. The country's decided to maintain a travel ban from southern Africa at least until Tuesday. France reported over 31,600 COVID cases on Sunday. In Germany, 2 Omicron cases have been detected so far. Restrictions on air travel from South Africa also took effect on Sunday. Airlines will be bringing back German citizens from South Africa, and there is a mandatory 14-day quarantine for travellers. Meanwhile, in Austria, over 5,000 people took to the streets to protest against compulsory vaccinations. The government has mandated vaccines from February next year in a country with one of the lowest vaccination rates in Western Europe. Around 66% of its 8.9 million population are fully vaccinated. Here in the United Kingdom, the British government announced new measures over the weekend, toughening rules for people arriving in Britain, particularly around testing, and ordering mandatory use of masks in some public settings like shops. The newly discovered Omicron variant has been detected in at least 13 countries already. Apart from Europe, it's been found in South Africa, Botswana, Australia, Israel, Hong Kong and Canada. Canada has so far confirmed at least 2 cases of the new variant. Both the patients are understood to have a travel history to Nigeria. Canada has restricted the entry of foreign nationals from several countries in Africa. America has ramped up its travel restrictions as well. Flights have been banned from South Africa and 7 other nations.
When you diminish or stop or block travel from a particular country, there's a reason for that. It's to give you time to do things. So don't let this decision that was made about blocking the travel from certain countries go without a positive effect. And the positive effect is to get us better prepared, to rev up on the vaccination, to be really ready for something that may not actually be a big deal, but we want to make sure that we're prepared for the worst, and that's what we should be doing.
Japan has announced tough border measures, barring all new foreign arrivals from entering the country.
(外国人の入国については11月30日午前0時より全世界を対象に禁止をいたします。
Australia has also confirmed at least 3 cases of the new variant. A South African man has tested positive for it after arriving from Johannesburg last week. Israel's recorded 2 cases of the Omicron variant, and WION has been speaking to the spokesperson of Israel's Sheba Medical Center, Steve Waltz. It's one of the top 10 hospitals in the world, and we've been asking him how Israel is preparing to combat the spread.
At this moment, Israeli investigators are checking to see exactly how bad the situation is with Omicron, whether or not it is more infectious, whether or not it punches through the existing vaccines that we're using here in Israel, which are Pfizer and Moderna. It'll take another week or 2 before we really know. What we're really concerned about is a new spike in the existing corona numbers here in Israel and the flu season. We don't want a situation where there is a perfect storm, where people are not vaccinating for the flu. We may have to vaccinate for the 4th vaccine. If this all comes together on top of Omicron, Israel will be one of the countries that will suffer greatly, but the government is taking measures to try and prevent a real outbreak here. So we're still in an unknown phase.
A South African doctor who was amongst the first in the country to suspect a new variant has said that the Omicron patients she's been seeing are experiencing mild symptoms and that the hype may not match the reality on the ground.
Looking at the mildness of the symptoms that we are seeing, currently there is no reason for panicking, as we don't see severely ill patients. I also checked with the hospital, some of the hospitals in my area, and one of the biggest hospitals, they only have 1 patient currently that's COVID positive on a ventilator, and they don't even know whether it's COVID, it's Delta, or whether it is Omicron related. Even the provincial hospital, the biggest one, Steve Pico, not really seeing a lot of adults. They do, however, see a higher index of children coming in with COVID-19. And these children has not been vaccinated. So the clinical picture for us is extremely important. And we acknowledge that it might change going forward. But the hype that's being created currently out there in the media and worldwide doesn't correlate with the clinical picture.
Next, the migration crisis in the English Channel, which has created a new rift between two neighbours, France and the United Kingdom. It's a relationship which was already tense with post-Brexit tensions and an unresolved fishing rights row, and also the recent AUKUS security pact. The countries are witnessing a war of words now between the French President and the British Prime Minister. 17 men, 7 women and 3 minors died last week after their inflatable lost air and took on water off Calais. French and EU ministers responsible for immigration have convened in France's Calais without the UK. At the meeting, France pushed its European partners for help in the crackdown on people smuggling. French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin met with his counterparts from Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium and the European Commission. The death of 27 migrants trying to cross the English Channel last week was the worst tragedy on record in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. The key development from the meeting was that the EU's border agency, Frontex, will deploy a surveillance plane over the Channel coast. Migrant crossings will be monitored 24 hours a day. A joint statement after the meeting promises to strengthen operational cooperation on tackling people smugglers.
That we agreed to have an even closer cooperation between the member states and the Commission via our agencies, and to be able to deploy, for example, airplane, also standing course if necessary, to work closer also on returns and on police cooperation. We need to put higher emphasis on the priority of this issue.
Un avion qui ne sera pas ni technologie britannique, ni avec du personnel britannique, ni pavillon britannique, un avion européen, aller jour et nuit pouvoir aider la police française, la police néerlandaise, la police belge. Les small boats ne partent pas que de France, vous le savez bien. Et donc à partir du 1er décembre, cet avion de Frontex nous aidera très fortement.
But despite the crisis affecting Britain, with migrants trying to make their way from France to the UK via the Channel, Britain wasn't at the talks. It was excluded after a row last week. The French Interior Minister says that France is ready for a serious discussion with Britain on issues relating to illegal migration, but says Paris will not be held hostage to what it calls London's domestic politics. Darmanin says France has been handling the issue for 25 years and insists it's now time that London wakes up. He says Britain needs to assume responsibility by making itself less economically attractive for illegal migrants.
Je veux juste souligner devant vous, monsieur, que les accords du Touquet, c'est des accords qui consistent à se mettre d'accord sur l'immigration légale, pas sur l'immigration illégale. Notre difficulté avec la Grande-Bretagne aujourd'hui, c'est l'immigration illégale. Ce sont des migrants, des personnes clandestines qui veulent aller, qui traversent le monde, qui traversent l'Europe, qui traversent la France pour aller en Grande-Bretagne. D'abord, c'est la Grande-Bretagne qui doit prendre ses responsabilités et limiter l'attractivité de son territoire, l'attractivité économique, et permettre, je l'ai dit, la voie légale pour demander l'asile en Grande-Bretagne, puisque aujourd'hui la Grande-Bretagne doit prendre sa part. Et puis deuxièmement, évidemment, lutter contre les passeurs.
2 days after the Channel tragedy, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wrote to President Emmanuel Macron. He set out 5 steps the two countries could take together and posted the letter on Twitter before, according to Paris, the French leader received it. Now a look at the smallest province in Canada, which has been attracting immigrants from around the world. It's called Prince Edward Island and was made famous globally by the Anne of Green Gables novels.
In the North Atlantic Ocean lies a small Canadian island province that has, for the past decade, been quietly attracting waves of immigrants to its peaceful shores. Known to many as the pastoral setting for the well-known 1908 children's novel Anne of Green Gables, the smallest Canadian province is attracting newcomers in search of a slower pace of life. Since 2019, Prince Edward Island has been experiencing a declining birth rate and a migration of its native-born population to other parts of the country.
I would say a few years ago, probably around 2015, 2016, PI suffered from the loss of, young workers.
Prince Edward Island, it has an aging population and a declining birth rate.
Since 2017, the number of deaths has outpaced births on Prince Edward Island. As its young population left, the provincial government looked abroad to fulfill the shortages in the domestic labor market and bolster its population.
We have a wide variety of industries who are looking to immigration to assist with labor shortages. That ranges from traditional industries such as tourism, hospitality, agriculture, aquaculture, as well as, emerging industries here in PEI.
The work the province has done internationally through job fairs and student recruitment to attract immigration now gives it the fastest growing population in Canada, with a 5-year growth rate of 11.8%. It's also the only Canadian province with a declining median age.
We see immigration as a positive thing from both a population growth, economic growth, as well as that cultural diversity that's very important to the fabric here at Prince Edward Island.
Now what we're seeing, our primary source countries are India, the Philippines, China's still an important source country, Vietnam, and Nigeria, Mexico, Jamaica. So we would have, on an average year, a non-pandemic year, we would receive about 2,000 new clients a year from over 70 different countries around the world.
It's basically very easy to come to PI.
It's not only the ease of immigration, but also the unique island lifestyle that many find attractive.
I really enjoy the traditional way of living here. Some people may feel like it's kind of boring, but we actually really like the lifestyle here.
Before I moved here, I actually never heard of PI before, but once I came here, it's I'm not regretting at all.
With a track record of consistent growth and a welcoming population, officials hope immigrants will find island life rewarding, just as this province has benefited from those who call Prince Edward Island their new home. Chad Ingram for VOA News, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
Talks between Iran and world powers are set to resume, but expectations of a breakthrough on the nuclear deal are low. The talks are aimed at bringing both Iran and the US back into the 2015 nuclear deal. The US, under former President Trump, withdrew from the deal in 2018 and reimposed economic sanctions. Iran and the US are at odds over the exact US sanctions which should be lifted and how Tehran would reverse multiple steps it's already taken to build its nuclear program. The 2015 deal restricted the purity to which Iran could enrich uranium. The deal set it to 3.67%, far below the 90% required to make it weapons grade. But Iran has now enriched to a highest level of around 60%. The deal also only allows Iran to enrich uranium for research, and it's not allowed to accumulate it. But Iran is now refining uranium with hundreds of advanced centrifuges. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which oversees Iran's nuclear activities, has estimated that Tehran has just under 2.5 tons of enriched uranium. This is 12 times more than the 202.8 kilograms the deal allows. Iran currently has 17.7 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%. It takes around 25 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium to make one nuclear bomb. The deal also allowed for snap inspections of undeclared sites by the UN nuclear watchdog. It allows the IAEA to monitor the situation by installing cameras and other devices beyond core activities. Iran has stopped snap inspections and is not allowing the watchdog to have access to the camera recordings. Iran insists its nuclear program is entirely peaceful, but the country's new government has dragged its feet in returning to the negotiating table. It's now demanding admission of culpability from the United States, the immediate lifting of all US sanctions, and a guarantee that no future US president will again abandon the deal. The creative designer for Louis Vuitton, the founder of the brand Off-White, and one of the world's leading black fashion designers, Virgil Abloh, has died. Abloh passed away on Sunday due to cancer. Virgil Abloh was a trailblazer in the world of high street fashion and design.
Virgil Abloh, fashion's highest profile black designer and the creative mind behind Louis Vuitton's menswear collections, died on Sunday of cancer. Abloh, who was American, had worked to transform the French luxury brand since being brought in as the men's artistic director in 2018. His arrival marked the marriage between streetwear and high-end fashion, mixing sneakers and camouflage pants with tailored suits and evening gowns. His influences included graffiti art, hip-hop, and skateboard culture, a style embraced by Louis Vuitton as it sought to attract younger customers. In July of 2021, parent company LVMH expanded his role to include launching new brands and partnering with existing ones in a variety of sectors beyond fashion. LVMH also bought a 60% stake in Abloh's Off-White label, which had folded into the parent company. Abloh, who was 41, had been battling a rare aggressive form of cancer, cardiac angiosarcoma, according to a post on his Instagram page. LVMH chief executive Bernard Arnault said, quote, "Virgil was not only a genius designer, a visionary, he was also a man with a beautiful soul and great wisdom."
And that's all we have for today's WION Live broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett. Thanks very much indeed for watching. See you at the same time tomorrow. Do stay tuned to WION. World is One.
Many other this is right, Arab.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast. Global alarm over new variant.
A new variant of the Wuhan virus is spreading in South Africa.
Mutated virus is now more virulent and spreads more rapidly.
The discovery of the Omicron variant has triggered global alarm.
Coronavirus infections are at a record high in several parts of Europe.
Amid alarming surge, new curbs imposed.
All report new highs in daily infections.